Okay. I think we're doing it.
We're doing it.
We're doing it here. Okay, so today I'm interviewing the one and only Meryl Davis. Welcome. You're my first interview.
I'm so honored. Seriously, I'm very honored that you asked me to be your first interview. Thank you.
Of course. Well, okay. So I figured I would start off because you're the one and only. I'll kind of just explain what I'm doing. So the whole concept of this is kind of this idea of delicious ambiguity, which is my favorite Wagner quote. And essentially it's about taking what life throws at you, and maybe you don't exactly know what is coming your way or where you're going, but finding a way to live in that moment and enjoy every step of the way. And I think that that is something that a lot of us aspire towards, but never actually accomplish because not knowing is terrifying. And so I kind of wanted to get down to that moment for you. And before we get started, Adam Rapon and I have had this conversation a lot. When we were hanging out at your place at Stars on Ice, I think it was 2017, and you had everyone over for dinner. We were all sitting around, and you kind of started talking about your post-Olympic experience and what you went through. And I think for a lot of the athletes that have come up knowing you, I remember talking with Adam afterwards and just being so shocked that you felt the way that you did, because Adam and I see you as like this woman who has her life together. And I mean, you very much do, but like just hearing you be so open and emotional about how you actually experienced life after the Olympics just has helped me so much through these couple of months, just because it was like, if an Olympic champion can go through something that's difficult, like I can do it too. So that being said, I wanted to ask you, what was that one moment where it kind of hit you and you were just like, where do I go next? What am I doing?
Yeah. Well, first off, I think it's so awesome that you're doing this series. And one of the reasons I wanted to, talk to you and just be open and honest about my experience is that, if you can in some way help other people go through something by sharing your own story, why not do that? And so the fact that you're doing this, I think, is so amazing. And I think it'll really shed light on this, not just for our fellow athletes, but for other people going through something similar, some sort of transition. So very excited. I'm excited to watch all of your other interviews. And as I said, beyond honored to be your first. To answer your question, I guess, it was sort of, there were multiple times that I experienced this sense of just like, oh gosh, for the first time in my life, I have literally no idea what I'm doing. And it sprung up shockingly quickly. We finished our free dance in Sochi, our final free dance in Sochi. We had won, and sort of almost immediately, while there was all of this excitement and just, it was such a surreal, wonderful moment, I also remember sort of feeling this sense of this like out of body experience, because I was like, what do we do now? What happens now? Because since the age of 5, not that we have been in the pursuit of being Olympic champions since the age of 5 or being an Olympian since the age of 5, but, I've always known that with baby steps, like putting one foot in front of the other, I knew what direction I was going in. I knew whether or not I could verbalize it, I knew sort of in and of myself what I wanted and where I had to go and the direction I had to go in to make that happen. And so, like, almost immediately after we won in Sochi, again, not to say that it wasn't just a beautiful experience and exciting, I just remember having no sense of direction. Sort of same thing on the podium, stepping off the podium, but and sort of reaching a new level of that experience. I had sort of imagined, with all the stress and all of the dedication in the lead up to both Olympics, but in particular Sochi, that I would just go on vacation for like weeks and be on a beach and recharge and just like live my life and just, you know, be like sipping pina coladas, just like, oh, finally, you know. And I remember following Dancing with the Stars pretty much immediately going on vacation and being in Hawaii thinking to myself, like, what now? What do I want to do now? And Charlie and I hadn't decided that we didn't want to go back to competition necessarily, although I think we both had that feeling. I think we both, for years before we officially made the decision not to return to competition, I think we both were leading in that direction. But I remember being in Hawaii just thinking, like, what are my other passions? What have I not been able to do for years? What have I been putting off that I'm dying to try? You know, what things do I want to pursue and figure out whether or not I'm good at them, whether or not I'm interested in them. And I think it was on vacation in Hawaii that I really realized for the first time, like, I really, really want to find something else that I'm really excited about and passionate about. And, you know, it's been many years of sort of that same feeling in a way.
Well, it's from what you've kind of described to me in the past, it doesn't just like, it's not like one day you don't know what you're doing and then the next day you're like, voila, I've got it. Like, this has been such a work in progress for you. And I think my next question would probably be, so you're sitting on the beach and you're thinking that what do you even like? And I feel like as athletes, we don't really have the opportunity to explore what we do like to do beyond the rink. I think that's a big issue that a lot of athletes and maybe, you know, people beyond sport face. Like, what do you like to do other than what you've been doing for the last 20-some years of your life? So how did you even start that? How did you start down that road?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting because I always feel kind of guilty when I'm talking to kids and they ask me the question, you know, did you ever want to quit? Because I feel quit skating, that is, because I feel like the answer I want to give them is yes, but here's how I overcame that feeling, you know, because I think that would be the most helpful. But the reality is that I never wanted to quit. Like, I always loved skating, and we ran into Charlie and I together, and then of course with on my own ran into issues and moments that were hard and moments that were you know, discouraging. But there was literally never a time between the age of 5 and 27 that I was like, I want to quit, or like I want to stop this, which is crazy. Like, that's insane. But I loved skating that much, you know, and I think in so many ways, we as people who are fortunate enough to discover a passion at such a young age, we don't always have to think about why we're passionate about it, and that evolves over time as well. You know, I always loved the act of skating, but then I sort of fell more and more in love with interpreting music and the acting component and telling a story. And it's such a multifaceted sport that you're able to explore different parts of yourself, you know, designing costumes, picking music, acting, telling a story, being in the gym and being very physical and pushing your body, being competitive. Like, just, it's so multifaceted and so challenging in so many ways that if you're in love with this multifaceted sort of beast that is competitive figure skating, I think we sort of get spoiled in that we are able to satiate these many parts of ourselves as individuals through skating. And so for me, you know, considering sort of for the first time in a very real way, what direction do I want to go in? What things do I want to explore? I think one of the reasons it was so difficult for me was because I knew, hey, I'm interested in costume design. I'm interested in the music. I'm interested in the acting component. I'm interested in, you know, pushing yourself physically. And I think when you have all of those interests and you've been able to explore them for so long, it becomes incredibly frustrating to pick just one and say, you know what, this is what really sticks out to me as something I want to pursue.
Absolutely. There's just so many levels to skating that people can, and that's the reason why so many people fall in love with it. And even if you hate one aspect of it one day, there's still so many other things that make it so great. So that's, I mean, I never once was like, I want to quit. I was always like, I would like to be able to go on vacation. I would like to be able to go hang out with my friends, but I was never once like, I could stop this.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's insane when you think about it. Just the years that we've dedicated to never want to stop is.
I mean, we're not right in the head, Meryl. We're not. There's something wrong with us, for sure. Okay, so then let's see, what have I written down? I was going to ask you if you kind of like came upon this moment all of a sudden and if it hit you out of nowhere or did you sense it coming, but it kind of sounds like you just got to the point where you achieved your Olympic dreams and you were just like, oh,
yeah.
Okay, what next?
You know, I to be honest, I didn't really see it coming. And you know, Charlie and I always took a lot of pride in going to school, you know, regular school through high school and then going to university and taking classes and being on campus. And, you know, I was like in a sorority and I was like, oh, let me do college for a while. And we always took a lot of pride in working towards being well-rounded people with other interests and not being just figure skaters all day, every day.
Yeah.
And because we took a lot of pride in that, I think I had this idea that I was setting myself up for a seamless transition. But the reality is I never really even thought about the transition seriously.
Yeah.
We were so focused, and I don't know if you felt the same way. We were so focused on the task at hand and, you know, those short-term goals. Like you think like, okay, Olympics or Worlds or these long-term goals. Whether it's at the beginning of the year or, you know, as a kid thinking about them, the big picture. But I just never, when people would ask me, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or even when I was in my 20s, like, what do you want to do whenever you're done skating in this, like, hypothetical world where that's going to happen at some point.
Right.
I was like, oh, like, maybe this. And sort of that feeling of when you're a kid and you answer the question as if there's no sense of, like, commitment.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of rang true until I was 27, you know, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a veterinarian or maybe I'll be these things, you know, just because I don't need to know. And I honestly, as much as like I was saying, I considered myself well-rounded and I worked towards having a social life and being interested in other things, which I certainly was and am. I just never took that moment seriously. And when it dawned on me that like I not only do I have to figure out something else, like I really want to figure out something else. I have this desire to, you know, commit myself and to set a new goal and to achieve and take pride in, you know, working towards the goal and overcoming obstacles. You know, all these things that we take such pride in as athletes. Overcoming obstacles is an amazing feeling, and running into a hurdle, running into a challenge, and running into a challenge and sort of taking pride in the ability to see your way through it and keep going is such a great feeling. So to be able to do that in something else is something I knew I wanted. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know, like, what direction to go in to do that.
Well, I think also, like you were saying, as an athlete, yeah, you say you want to go to the Olympics. Yes, you're focused on Worlds, but also we're trained to take it day by day and have these short-term goals that we're working towards, and that's just kind of like the overarching theme of whatever you're trying to build towards. So then how are you supposed to, beyond everything that you have on your plate with skating, actively think about what you're going to do next? To me, that always felt like a distraction, like a very unhealthy distraction. And if I was trying to do something outside of skating, it was going to be taking away from all of my work.
Yeah. And I think you also sort of realize, you know, especially those of us who are fortunate enough to skate and compete into adulthood, I think you also realize the like sort of malleability of your interests, right? Like my interests had changed so dramatically from the age of like 23 to 27. Mm-hmm. And I sort of realized as I progressed through skating, knowing that this is something I'm passionate about, something that I want to do, I will experience things that could perhaps pique my interest with things I didn't know I was interested in, or maybe I'll experience things that I thought I was interested in and then find out I actually don't like them, which has been very true. But I think staying open was something I was really excited about, and I'm glad that I was. I think it's a good thing. As I know you are as well, and it's exciting. It's just this sort of combination of like excitement and having this freedom for the first time in a way that you've never had, and also this fear and just like terror because you're used to structure and you're used to coaches and you're used to Team USA being like, how's your health, how's your nutrition, how are all these things going, how are your sleeping patterns, and we've learned to thrive with structure and guidance and direction. And so when you no longer have structure, guidance, or direction, it's like,
what do I do? How do I take care of myself?
Yes, exactly. What am I supposed to be eating right now? I don't know.
Okay, so then that kind of leads me into my next question. So you reach this point, you're trying to figure out what's next. What are the active steps, or what was the mindset that you had to get into that you felt was the most beneficial for you moving forward? I think you mentioned being open, which is huge. You can't just like pigeonhole yourself into one idea of what's next, but what steps did you take to kind of get the ball moving?
I took a very loose and unstructured approach pretty consciously. I mean, I definitely, there were a couple times I sat down to write things on paper and sort of set goals and figure out, okay, there are all these things that I know I'm interested in. Do I want to try to figure this out strategically, or do I want to just sort of let myself float and explore for a while? And I feel like so few people in life have the opportunity to float and to explore without a lot of pressure, be it, financial or otherwise. And the reality is that Charlie and I, as I said, we hadn't decided whether or not we were going to return to competition necessarily, but we've been incredibly busy for the last 4 years. I mean, as soon as Olympics ended, we were pretty nonstop. And I think it's important to acknowledge this. We were pretty nonstop working on things that we loved, and we still are. We're still skating. We're still doing a lot of shows, which I love. And so the ability to, while this one part of me was sort of in a mini panic mode, I guess, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, all the while I had this amazing job and career and these opportunities doing something I love to make money and stay busy and, channel some passion and energy into travel, see the world. So I guess, to answer your question, I really wanted to embrace the opportunity to not force myself to figure something out too quickly, because I was in this unique position of, I don't really have to figure it out right now, and especially because not everyone has that opportunity, I felt like it would be a real shame to force myself to figure it out before it was necessary. And so one of my sort of approaches and philosophies has just been trying things, saying yes to things, whether or not I thought I would be interested in them, and giving it a shot, and sort of just allowing myself to picture myself pursuing these sort of various paths. And that's been sort of my philosophy. But I think in addition to that, and I know this isn't exactly your question, I spent a lot of time talking to people that I thought were, amazing mentors, and asking them, in particular skaters, but other people as well, what was your experience and how did you deal with it, and how has your perspective on this changed and evolved? And I had many conversations with Evan Lysacek, who I so appreciated. He really went out of his way to talk to me and give me advice and guidance. I talked to Sasha, I talked to Christy, I talked to all of these amazing people who I had grown up just idolizing and were such incredible mentors. I was fortunate enough to be able to have these conversations with them and just hear from them and their perspectives. And, one of the things I realized is there was no one right answer. Everyone was dealing with it so differently.
Mhm.
Moving away from something you know you love and you've been doing your whole life is scary, and it's challenging for everyone. And yet everyone has such a different perspective on it. And so it just made me realize that I just need to sort of pave my own path and figure out my own way, because no one is dealing with it, the one right way, or has like the solution that everyone should sort of follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No right answer.
Right, exactly.
But also, I think you made a really great point. I think that it's something that a lot of people don't initially think of is 9 times out of 10, someone who has had this same kind of a feeling.
Yeah.
And you have to start a conversation and you have to feel comfortable reaching out to people. Like I reached out to you, I reached out to Tanith White. Like there are people in your immediate community who have been there, and just having a conversation, and maybe you don't follow verbatim what they did, but it still like gives you ideas for roads you can go down or how to approach something. I think that's a great point. Okay. Another thing, have you felt confident the whole way, or did you second guess yourself at any point? And when you did, what would you do?
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not feeling confident the whole way. I have second guessed myself a lot, but also I try to remind myself something that I talk to kids a lot about when I'm talking to students and children, is these experiences as an athlete, whether you are an athlete or not, experiences in sport are very applicable, and these lessons you learn to anything in life. And so I oftentimes try to remember myself, or I try to remember, these lessons I've learned as an athlete and the years we've spent, working towards being Olympians. Those skills are applicable in anything, whether it's setting a goal and being able to push through, the obstacles and be successful. Belief in yourself, realizing that nothing is going to be perfect the first time around, and accepting the fact that that's okay. I think certainly a lot of second guessing myself, but also realizing, like I said, that it's okay to start something and not be the best at it. It's okay to start from the bottom. And I think that's something that I've spent a lot of time reminding myself about, because it's really difficult as someone in your late 20s, early 30s to come out of something where you are among the best in the world after spending almost 30 years doing it, and you're only 30 years old, and then all of a sudden you think to yourself, okay, well, now I'm going to start something else that I've never done before. I'm going to start at the bottom. It's going to be scary. I'm going to have no idea what I'm doing. And in so many ways, that's a very unfamiliar feeling for us, because we've been, elite figure skaters since we were teenagers, essentially, and so we've been able to take pride in that. And so starting from the bottom, I think, can be really scary, but just reminding myself, and I think just in general, reminding ourselves that these lessons as athletes can be applied in whatever we do next was really an important thing for me.
Absolutely. A couple more. Okay. What do you wish you would have known at the start of this that would have made everything easier?
Yeah, I think that there are so many things you know, but you don't know.
Right.
Yeah, it's like you understand that these sayings are there for a reason, or you understand these general concepts, but it's hard to feel it and let that sort of guide you. And one of those things, I think, for me has been, like, your life is up to you. And it's great to be able to have conversations with people, listen to people's opinions. But at the end of the day, the person who's going to live that life and live with those decisions and the directions that you choose, it's going to be you. Mm-hmm. And so I think, and a piece of advice I would give to myself coming out of the Olympics, I don't know whether or not I would have taken it at the time or understood it wholeheartedly at the time, is just to listen to myself, because I was getting a lot of advice from a lot of well-meaning people. And a lot of it was like, you got to strike while the iron's hot. You got to do this. You got to do that. Like, don't miss the opportunity. Do all these things. And that's great. And I theoretically, I understand that. And I think to a certain extent it's true. But, what are you doing? Are you doing something just to do it? Are you doing something because that's what's expected of you or what other people would do in that situation? Are you doing something because it's what you actually want or what you're passionate about or the direction you want to go in and going to make you happy? And so ultimately, I think that being in that position of coming out of the Olympic Games, having opportunities as an Olympian, stepping into other roles potentially, I think there's a lot of pressure to do sort of what people expect someone in that position to do.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But just because other people expect you to make certain choices and do certain things and try, X, Y, and Z doesn't mean it's necessarily what's going to feel good to you or what's, it's the right choice for you. And so to answer your question, I have all these long-winded answers. I'm sorry, but
I love it.
Yeah, I guess just really allowing myself to dig deep and think like, what do I really want? What am I really passionate about? And I think also taking time, I was just telling my mom this. While Charlie and I have been incredibly busy for the last 4 years doing things I love, and I wouldn't really change a thing, I thought I had to be busy all the time doing something big and exciting, and like I had to like fill my schedule at all times. And now 4.5 years later, I realized like I could have taken a month and been like, hey, I'm gonna go explore Europe for a month, see you in July. Or like, hey, I want to go try this like study abroad program for 6 weeks in Australia. I'm gonna go do that.
Yeah.
And thinking totally outside the box and realizing you don't have to be busy to be successful, if that makes sense.
Well, we're used to having every second of our day filled up. So to us, that's working towards success.
Yeah. So I think that's something that even very recently I'm starting to try to explore a little bit more.
That's great. Well, also, you're not going to know immediately. And we always want an answer right away.
Yeah.
And it's not just going to pop up. Okay, so then if you going down this road would have had the ability to talk to anyone about it, who would it have been?
I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that like 16-year-old me never would have thought I would have had the opportunity to have a conversation with, So whether it's like Ambiguity, Michelle Kwan, Evan Lice, just all these people I've idolized my whole life, to be able to have a conversation with them at this sort of like crossroads in my own life and ask them questions, such an honor.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I really wish, maybe not a conversation, but I wish I had done a little bit more reading for pleasure, like reading autobiographies.
Yeah.
And exploring other people's stories, whether it's people who are living or people from long ago, but just sort of like exploring the stories and lives of people and philosophies of people through the ages. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of talking with other people, whether it was like people I'm dating or my mom and my dad, who are just like the most incredible, guides ever. I'm so lucky. My younger brother, gave me some advice kind of constantly. I don't know if you feel the same way with your brother, but my little brother, who has always been my little brother, all of a sudden
it's the weirdest thing, isn't it?
Yeah, he's like, let me tell ya, like this is it's really
I know. My brother did the exact same thing, and I'm like, you've always been my kid brother, and now here you are, like wiser in life in some ways than I am.
It's incredible, and I think oftentimes those people in your life know you better than anyone.
Totally.
Sometimes, and so they can kind of call you out on things and you'll still love them. So my brother was oftentimes that person for me who was like calling me out on things, and I was like, you know what, you're totally right. You're absolutely right.
The best perspective.
But yeah, people to talk to, I guess. Yeah, I mean, that would really be my answer to that, is just sitting and allowing myself to read people's stories sort of on my own and mull it over would be something that I would advise people to do.
Yeah. I read, you might have read this, Shonda Rhimes' Year of Yes.
I haven't read it. Actually, I think you told me how amazing it was, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I agree. Like, just reading perspectives of people you wouldn't necessarily have access to, it's just so eye-opening and so interesting. Okay, so then now I'm going to send you into some rapid-fire fun questions. So
you're doing an amazing job, by the way, I have to say.
Thank you. I'm trying to be like a little bit correspondent-y meets like wine on my couch. Even though we're doing this at like 1 p.m. my time, so it's like coffee on the couch, but still, I want you to know that.
I love that. And actually, not to interrupt you, but I was a little nervous because I feel like you and I have had so many really, really candid conversations over the last couple of years. I was like thinking about the idea that this is a candid conversation, but other people are gonna
actually.
And so it's a little scary because, you know, you want to be candid, but also I'm like, I don't know if I want to have like my normal conversation with Ashley because I'm very candid with you.
I know you are. Well, that's the thing, because I was thinking about the conversations that we had in the past, and I feel like our best conversations happen in the Stars on Ice locker rooms. Like, we solve the world's problems.
Yes.
In those locker rooms. And I was like, well, I'm not going to set her up to do that. Yeah. So hopefully I've like matched your level of candidness that you feel comfortable with.
You're doing an amazing job. Yeah.
Okay, great. Also, this entire time, Ollie has just been like sitting and listening in on your conversation. So he's only bit me twice, so it's really great.
She'll sleeping. She'll sleep until 11.
Teenagers.
Yeah, teenagers.
Okay, rapid fire. Favorite place in the world?
Italy.
Okay, what is your most prized possession?
I have a picture of my family at Disney World when I was probably 6 or 7, and that's just, I love that picture.
Oh, I love that. What is your own favorite feature?
On myself?
Yeah.
Probably my muscles, just in general. I take pride in my strength. Yeah.
Love that. What are you binging on Netflix right now?
I love The Walking Dead.
I would never guess that, Meryl. Oh my God.
My brother, I know this is rapid fire. My brother loved the show. I was like, oh, I would never watch that. And then I oddly think that the adrenaline of watching the show, you know, not competing, I sort of realized that like adrenaline rush of watching a show like that was almost filling this like void of adrenaline. So I know I guess, but The Walking Dead, yeah.
I can't do those like Armageddon end of the universe shows because I'm like somewhat convinced that that's actually going to happen. But now I know that you'll know what needs to be done. So I just need to hunt you down.
Come over. I'll know exactly what to do. Yeah.
Great. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word? Super cliche, but dream, I guess. As per my like 6th grade AIM.
I was going to say that's absolutely your AIM screen name.
Yeah. I mean, it's cliche, but yeah, I mean, I think that's been a big part of my life is just allowing myself to dream. So I would have to say dream.
I'm down with it. What's the last book you read?
Michelle Obama's autobiography.
Have you finished it yet?
Well, I'm nearing the end now. It's
plain reading, yeah?
Yes, plain reading. It's incredible. Yeah.
I just started it. She's so great. I love her.
Amazing.
Everything about her. What's your party trick?
My party trick. Disappearing before the party.
The Irish goodbye.
Oh, I mean, you know this about me. You are more down for like an evening out than I am. I am sleepy. I'm a sleepy individual. I don't know. I love socializing in really small groups with people that I know, but I tend to get overwhelmed in like really big social settings.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to go to my bed.
You're down for like a cozy chit chat, and then as soon as it becomes anything more, all of a sudden I'm like, where did Meryl go? And I'm like, she's in bed right now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's subtle, and like that's your party trick. I love that.
It's subtle. Maybe it's rude at times, but sometimes I commit to socializing, connecting with people for a while, but in big groups, I'm just like, basically. So that's my trick, basically.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, and since you're new-ish in LA, what is the best spot you found in LA so far? What's your favorite spot?
So we're living in Silver Lake, which the first 4 months I was living here, I was not a super fan. It just was different from growing up in suburban Detroit, and I kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of a homebody, so I was expecting to feel at home, I guess. And it was the first time, other than, you know, being here for Dancing with the Stars for a couple months or being on tour, it was the first time I've ever really like lived away from home, which is weird, you know, in your 30s. But now, to answer your question, I absolutely love Silver Lake. I love the vibe here. It took me a couple months.
Yeah.
So many incredibly creative people who are willing to think outside the box, just like dress anyway and express themselves, and interesting restaurants and little shops. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say it's my favorite place in LA, you know, hard stop, because there's so many amazing places here, beautiful places, interesting places, but because we're living here, I'm actually really loving it now.
I love that. Okay, and last but not least, because this is also a little bit fashion-based,
yeah.
Number one, what brand makes up the majority of your closet?
I
know the answer.
Well, I think you could tell me, because we have the exact same wardrobe as we do.
That's true, we do.
You have a little bit maybe more like Madewell than I do. I feel like you pull off the Madewell really well. I feel like for me it's a toss-up between Anthropologie, Mix, and Aritzia. Those are kind of my top 3.
What about Club Monaco?
Yeah, you're right. I do have a lot of Club Monaco, don't I? Club Monaco. Yeah, maybe that's my answer. See, I knew you would know better than I do. I love Club Monaco.
Where I make up with Madewell, that's where you bring in the Club Monaco, because at the end of the day, you're like a little bit classier than me, and so we just kind of like
at all.
Throw on a striped tee, and you're like, I'll throw on a striped tee, but it's going to be made out of the most luxurious fabrics.
I think they're amazing. And also, not to jump back to the last question, but the fact that you moved away from LA right when I moved here,
it's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Anyway, luckily we get to see each other a lot.
We run into each other constantly. But that's it. That's completely harmless. You did it.
You did such a good job. And I can't wait to watch the rest of these episodes. And I mean, like I said, I am a firm believer in the idea that like sharing your story and your struggles and your perspective and adventure can only help other people, whether or not they're going through the same thing, or they can just pick bits and pieces to relate to. I think it's so important to be open and honest and share, so that, you know, our struggles can lift someone else up in some way. So the fact that you're creating this platform to be able to do that with people, I think is really incredible. So I can't wait to watch and tell everyone else to watch. And I just think you're fabulous. And I actually should say before I let you go or before you let me go, because this is your show. You know, my mom, as I've said, is sort of my spirit guide, guru, psychologist, like all of the above. I talk to my mom about everything. And lately, one of the things she's been saying is, she's been like, maybe be a little bit more like Ashley. Like, don't be afraid to do what you want and say what you want and be who you are, and just like have guts and just be like, you know, be unafraid and uninhibited. So I just think that
I'm honored.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I have been through a lot of similar things, and we have so many similarities, but we're different also in a lot of ways. And so I think that's one of the things that I really treasure about having you as a friend, is like having the opportunity to learn from you and grow with you and chat and have differing perspectives. So
yeah,
thank you.
Well, thanks, Meryl. And that is a official wrap on episode 1.
Good job, Ashley.